grew up reading C.S. Lewis and his Narnia stories. At that time I didn't get what was going on. I think it was when finally I was reading one, I started thinking, this looks like an allegory. And then I started realizing a Christian allegory. And then I felt, oh dear. I had to, of course, read all of them, but in the end I was slightly cross at Lewis for kind of trying to foist that kind of stuff on children. He, of course, was unashamed. He was arguing in his letters that, of course, if you're a Christian, you should make Christian stories and try to tell them. But then, of course, he hides everything. So instead of having Jesus, he turns him into a lion and so on. But it's an interesting problem in general, of course. Where do we get our ideas from? I grew up in boring Sweden in the 70s, so I had to read a lot of science fiction in order to get excitement. That science fiction story reading made me interested in technology and science and make it real, but it also gave me a kind of libertarian outlook accidentally. I realized that, well, maybe our current rules for society are arbitrary. We could change them to something better. And aliens are people too, as well as robots. So in the end, that kind of education also set me on my path. So in general, what we read as children affect us, and sometimes in very subtle ways. I was reading one book about technologies of the future written by a German researcher. Today, of course, it's very laughably 60s, very much thinking about cybernetics and the big technology, fusion reactions and rockets. But it also got me thinking about that we can change the world completely. There is no reason to think that, for example, only 7 billion people can live on Earth. We could rebuild it to house trillions. It wouldn't be a particularly nice world. It would be nightmarish by our current standards, but it would actually be possible to do. It's rather that we have a choice and say, maybe we want to keep our world small scale with just a few billion people on it. Others would say, wait a minute, you can't even sustain a few billion people on a planet. We're wearing out the biosphere. Which again is based on a certain assumption about how the biosphere functions. We can produce food more efficiently than we currently do. If we went back to primitive hunter-gatherers, we would need several hundred Earths to sustain us all, simply because hunter-gatherers need enormous areas of land in order to get enough prey to hunt down in order to survive. Agriculture is much more effective, and we can go far beyond that. Things like hydroponics and in-vitro meat might actually in the future mean that we would say it's absolutely disgusting or rather weird to culture the farmland or eat animals. Would you actually eat an animal? Well, only disgusting people back in the Stone Age did that. Well, that Stone Age were using silicon, of course. Dividing history into ages is very fraught because when you declare that this is the atomic age, you make certain assumptions. So the atomic age didn't turn out so well because people lost their faith in our friend the atom. The space age didn't turn out to be a space age because people found better ways of using the money. In a sense, we went out into space prematurely before it was a good business case for it. The computer age, on the other hand, well, now computers are so everywhere that we could just as well call it the air age. It's everywhere. Similarly, the internet age, that's just the latest innovation. Probably, as people in the future look back, we're going to call it something completely different. Just like we want to divide history into things like the medieval age or the Renaissance, which are not always more than just labels. What I think is unique about our era in history is that we're very aware that we're living in a changing world, that is not going to be the same in 100 years, and it's going to be utterly, utterly different from what it was 100 years back. So many historical eras, people have been thinking, oh, we're on the cusp of some greatness or a great disaster. But we actually have objective good reasons to think things cannot remain as they were. There were too many people, too many brains, too much technology, and a lot of these technologies are very dangerous and very transformative. So if we can get through this without too much damage to ourselves and the planet, I think we're going to have a very interesting future. But it's also probably going to be a future that's going to be somewhat alien from what we can foresee. If you took an ancient Roman and put him into the modern society, he would be absolutely shocked, not just by our technology, but by our values. We regard clemency as something weird and compassion as a very good virtue. And he would say the opposite, compassion is for old ladies. And of course a medieval knight would say, you have no honor in the 21st century. And would say, oh yes, honor killings and all that, that's bad. Yeah, actually a lot of those medieval honorable ideals were actually immoral by our standards. So we should probably expect that our moral standards are going to be regarded by the future as equally weird and immoral. And this is of course a rather chilling thought, because our personal information is going to be available in future to our descendants, or even ourselves as older people with different values. A lot of advanced technologies we're worried about are going to be wielded by our children or older versions of ourselves in ways we might not approve. But they're going to say, yes, we actually figured out the ethics now. The problem, of course, where ethics is ever going is a really interesting question in itself. Some people say, oh yes, it's just relative, it's just societies making up rules to live by. But I do think we have learned a few things. The reduction in violence over historical eras show that we're getting something right. I don't think any relativists could say that violence is just arbitrarily and sometimes good, sometimes bad. I think it's a very clear bad thing. So I think we're making moral progress in some sense. We're figuring out better ways of thinking about morality. One of the interesting things about our current world is that we're aware that a lot of our ideas about morality are things going on in our culture and in our heads, and not just the laws of nature. That's very useful. Some people, of course, think there is some ideal or best moral system, and maybe there is. But we're not very good at finding it. It might turn out that in the long run, if there is some kind of ultimate sensible moral, we're going to find it. But that might take a very long time, and might take brains much more powerful than ours. It might turn out that all sufficient advanced alien civilization eventually figure out the right thing to do and do it. But it could also turn out that actually when we meet real advanced aliens, we're going to be as confused about philosophy as we are. That's one of the interesting things to find out about the universe.